Who are you? Beneath the expectations, the labels, and the societal conditioning, what does it truly mean to become you? I'm John Fleming, the founder and lead practitioner of Becoming You. I created Becoming You out of a desire to share my own experience of becoming myself and to support others who are curious about who they are. From a young age, I have been driven by a desire to figure out who I am, why I'm here, and how I can belong while being myself. This is Becoming You, the podcast. Conversations about uncovering, embracing, and being your true self. A place where I dive deep into what it means and what is required to live life as your most authentic self. Through real, honest, and grounded conversations with professionals and people who are walking the path. If you're curious about identity, authenticity, and personal freedom, your own or others, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. As we close out season 2 of Becoming You, the podcast, I wanted to take a moment to pause and reflect. This season has been all about uncovering the deeper layers of who you are, what shapes you, and how you can live more fully as your authentic self. In this episode, I'm bringing you some of the key moments and highlights from my conversations that stayed with me and that many of you have told me made an impact. As you listen back, I'd encourage you to reflect on what's resonated most for you this season. For me, one of the biggest takeaways has been the impact of visibility. I am impacted by the courage it takes to share honestly about who we are and the freedom that comes with that when we do. I hope these moments remind you of the power of honest human conversation, and I'd love for you to join me again for season 3 coming early next year. In the meantime, if you've enjoyed this season and want to support the podcast continue to grow, please leave a rating or review on Apple Podcasts. It really does make a difference and allows the podcast to reach others. For now, let's revisit some of the most standout moments from season 2.
I'm Kieran Rose, and I am an autistic man. And I'm also a researcher, a trainer, a consultant. I do clinical supervision, a lecture. I write, I do all sorts of different things. And all of that is framed around the concept of identity development, stigma, and reframing both the autism and now the neurodiversity narrative, because the neurodiversity narratives have been co-opted and taken off in a slightly problematic direction as well in lots of ways. I picked up a textbook one day and it was one written in the 1960s by Dr. Spock, who was not the science officer on the Starship Enterprise, but was a psychiatrist in the 60s. In the back was a kind of loose profile of an experience, which I kind of went, oh, he's talking about me. I had a diagnosis of what was then Asperger's syndrome, as did my sister. My dad was also dragged down there and was told that the words they used was, there is a spectrum for you, but we don't know what it is. I was literally left holding the baby at 3 o'clock in the morning, and he just stared at me for 3 hours, like literally bored his eyes into my soul. And I thought, oh my God, you're like me. And if you're like me, and I don't even know who I am, so how am I supposed to support you? When we're talking about autism, we should be talking about autistic experience, because that's a unique thing. That space in between knowing that you're safe and actually feeling safe, which is a very real place to be. When you grow up as someone who exists outside of the confines of what the neuronormative world insists the world should look like and what you should look like, when you are autistic, literally every aspect of your behavior and your identity as a human is up for in some way pathologization or correction or punishment, or even if you don't know that you're autistic and other people don't know that you're autistic, because you're still existing as an autistic person, whether you know it or not. So as you grow hearing those things, you learn to mistrust your own body, you learn to mistrust your own feelings, you learn to mistrust basically everything, and you exist in a world where nothing I do is right. And you might be safe enough at home where you're not getting that from your family. Everything you do is wrong, or is potentially wrong, or could be perceived as wrong. And So even if you're not doing something wrong, you're holding this note in your head that, what if I am doing it wrong? And so you second guess everything. Living like that is exhausting. People assume that masking then is something that, oh, look, there's other people over there and they might perceive me in a certain way. So I'm going to put my mask on and I'm going to change how I do things and then they'll accept me. Oh, I've just realized that I'm autistic. Now I have no idea who I am.
I distinctly remember teachers at school saying to my parents, parent-teacher meetings or reports or whatever, you know, John's really clever, but he doesn't apply himself. You know, that used to fucking gall me so much.
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, if I could apply myself, I fucking would, but I can't. And I'm trying to tell you people that I can't do this. I can't sit down and write something. I just can't do it.
We've created one way of teaching children. And then any child who can't access that way of teaching, we tell them they have special needs. Like, no, we need to be reflecting on the fact that you've built a system that was only designed for a certain group of people. Understanding or realizing that you're autistic is often incredibly empowering, but also makes you sit and look and reflect back on all the trauma you've experienced as well. We should all be, like, from childhood, every single human should be taught to understand what identity means and how identity shapes them. That would stop the fracturing of these identities. It would stop the fragmentization of people as they develop, because people would be more accepting and more open of the fact that people are shaped in all sorts of different ways and there are different reasons that make that happen. And again, going back to what I said right at the very beginning, answer that question, being a bit nicer to people, that's a good start for that.
If I was to be 100% authentic here on this podcast, totally open and totally honest, there's certain things that I've never told anybody. Even my hubby, who I'm with 30 years and he knows the bones of me, and I never will. So do I want to be completely authentic? And the answer is no. And it's not that I'm using it to, you know, we all have a shadow side and a dark side, as we know. So in that shadow side, there is authenticity in there too that I am not prepared. I mean, I'm only learning to look at that myself now. So that is authentically me, but I certainly would never be bringing that out into public. So, you know, it's, again, everybody will have a different probably slant on what authenticity is, but I just wanted to mention that because it's something that I've thought about. And I know it's not necessarily what people mean when they say be your authentic self. But to me, that is our true truth. And that goes very deep. But would we really be comfortable? Really, really be comfortable to share that? Of course we wouldn't. Not at all. So I don't believe anybody's authentic, Sean.
That's pretty accurate, to be honest. Yeah. I mean, I don't buy into this idea that authenticity is people being really honest all the time, because I think that's BS.
Yeah, I agree.
To be really frank. And I do think, like, lots of language or words or whatever, things get trendy.
Yeah.
And authenticity has become trendy, might still be a bit trendy at the moment. It was definitely trendy over the last decade.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I have more of your thinking along the lines of, like, that authenticity is about radical inclusion of all of us, including our shadow. And of course, like you said, naturally, we might not want to present all of us to the world. I guess my perspective on uncovering it is not necessarily going so far as to put it on show or display, but actually to uncover it within yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
So that you know it's there and that you can tolerate that side of yourself, so that you haven't fragmented or isolated parts of yourself.
Yeah. So with that distinction, then that kind of puts a whole different slant on my answer to you, because if that's where we're going or how we're thinking about it, I think then that yes, the shadow work is deeply important in all of that, and it will help us to go and do that work, which is very important work, even though I know sometimes it can be uncomfortable because we don't want to look at those sides of us. But I love that you're saying that it's uncovering it for ourselves, whereas that trendy thing is that, oh, I'm only being authentic, or, you know, she's very authentic, or he's authentic. I'm going, well, you're only seeing the outside. We don't really know. And do we really want to see people's authentic? Probably not.
If these episodes have been sparking curiosity in you about your own identity, then I've got just the thing to support your exploration. I'll be facilitating an Uncover You online workshop on Zoom very soon. This will be a space to gently explore uncovering who you authentically are. This workshop is for anyone ready to start or continue their becoming journey in a grounded, reflective, and supportive group space. Find the link in the show notes to book your space now. Yeah, I mean, it would be funny if we could flip the switch for a day and see what it was like.
No. Don't go there.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I would say about authenticity and it being trendy as well is that you don't want to be slanderous about anybody,
Yeah.
but it is often used to excuse bad behavior.
Yes,
You
absolutely.
know, so it's like you said there, well, I'm just being authentic. And it's like, well, no, you're actually being an asshole. So,
Yeah.
you know, you could be being authentic and being an asshole, maybe, but you definitely shouldn't be using it to shield against being rude or misbehaving or things like that.
Yeah.
And also, I think it can be a place for people to hide. So, like, I would definitely experience people who are highly defended from their shadow as proclaiming to be super authentic all of the time. That it's almost kind of like a way for people to avoid acknowledging their own relationship with themselves internally because they're being very externally authentic.
Becoming enlightened wasn't about, seeing the light and, reading all the books and doing yoga on the beach in Bali at sunset kind of thing. It was bringing the shadow into light. And that meant the hard work of bringing your shadow into consciousness. And then you had your ego, there was an ego self-access. The ego then became a service of the self or the higher self, rather than being just to do with service to self. It became more of service to others as you awakened within yourself. Whereas Freud, I like Freud and I've studied some of Freud's work, but Freud was far more limited in his view of the human psyche, and he based a lot of his thinking around the sexual impulses, and he couldn't go that extra mile that Freud or that Jung went. But not only Jung, Wilhelm Reich and Otto Rank and the other renegades who broke with Freud, because Freud and for political reasons too. Freud covered up a lot of his early work around when he was uncovering child sexual abuse in that period in Europe. He covered it all up because it wasn't politically savvy for him to do so, and he got warned off. So he kind of dropped the ball, unfortunately. That's not to say that his work is not invaluable. It's invaluable, very much so, and he was the father of psychoanalysis. Not that he invented anything new. I mean, when none of them did. Like, we go back and we look at Freud, Jung, or Adler, or any of them, and we see that they're only cycling back to ancient knowledge that was there long before modern civilization was here. You go back to the Gnostics or, the ancient shamanic teachings, to Taoism, to the ancient Buddhism. I mean, it's all there, but they put a modern framework on it, and it worked well. And as I said, Freud added a huge amount to modern psychology. But again, I like to think of things from a transpersonal psychology point of view. It's like a rainbow. All these individuals have a band on the rainbow, as Ken Wilber would say, but none of them have the whole truth. So the transpersonal perspective acknowledges all the previous thinkers and theorists, but it bands them together as a rainbow, and then includes psychospiritual things like, Buddhism, Zen, shamanism, Hinduism. So it's a much more complete system. And of course, humanity is in the process of evolution, so psychology. And, that's why, to answer your question, that's essentially why Jung appealed to me, was to do with the fact that he acknowledged the soul and the spirit.
I had kind of picked that up, I think, probably at some level, because all of the existential or transpersonal stuff that I have engaged with has come from outside my kind of formal training. Because
Yes.
there's been a hunger there for it at some level to kind of think, okay, yeah, like looking at the psychological level of things for me is very interesting.
Yeah.
Like I almost classify myself as a psychologist. I enjoy that area.
Yeah.
But I think looking at only one level is problematic. Like, you get that with the behavioralists as well.
Yes.
They just want to look at behavior as the total understanding of everything, and that you are just your behavior.
Yeah.
But, I think there's a lot more, like you said, to be got from looking at the social level, the behavioral level, the psychological level, the existential level, the transpersonal level, because you get a kind of a more full picture and understanding of self and of reality then.
Yes. I absolutely agree. I mean, be honest with you, I've never been a big fan of academia in that sense, because I saw academia and academics as gatekeepers for the truth. That the system itself, uses psychiatry and psychology to dumb down the human spirit and the human soul. So the academia, it's usually dry, it's lifeless in lots of ways. It's all about getting your PhD and you have to jump through all these hoops, and you end up, wasting a lot of time and learning nothing of value in the real world. And this is why I was very attracted to Stanislav Grof's work. Because Grof was an academic. He was a professor of psychiatry and PhD or whatever. But he went into the experiential realms, which where the real work is at, as far as I'm concerned, when he started working at LSD-25 in Czechoslovakia, and then moved on to holotropic breath work and incorporated shamanism and all the Jung and all the psychospiritual. Like, for me, Stan Grof is the most brilliant mind of the 20th, 21st century.
My name is Paige. I'm 27 and I'm a trans intersex woman living in Dublin. I genuinely think I'm living my life now for the first time. I've never lived my life, and I genuinely feel like I've met myself properly for the first time. It was like something that clicked in my head. It was like, this is who I am. And there was absolutely no doubt in my mind from that day, being 15 and 12 years on, it was a no-brainer. And I think since I've become gender affirmed, nobody can give me the validation that I can't give myself. And I find being empowered by yourself and being affirmed by yourself and not needing or seeking validation from anyone, I wake up every morning since my surgery, and I kind of sit on the end of the bed and I'm like, oh my God, this is what life was meant to be like for me. In order to change the narrative, you have to become the narrative. I always knew mentally that I was a woman, but I think from a physical standpoint, I was disgusted by my body, really. And looking back, gender dysphoria can be lethal. I could never repay my mother back for the acceptance and allowing me to just live. During my transition, I'd walk into a room and I'd know how to get out of it straight away, And you become extremely aware of yourself. It is a double-edged sword. I think when it comes to your freedom in yourself, I've never been more free. I do not need anything from anybody, really. What I'm saying is I don't need validation, which is great, but it is a double-edged sword, because I did stupidly think as well that having gender reassignment surgery, that's the end of it. I find cisgender straight men to still look at you regardless of whether you are pre-op or post-op. I think you can show a man how charismatic, strong, funny, important, amazing you are as a person, but once you tell them you're trans, everything else goes out the window and that's all they hear. But at the same time, it doesn't really bother me much anymore. I was attacked a couple of years ago by a guy in the city that had just started talking to me, and in order for me to get him away from me, I told him I was trans and he attacked me. When I get a comment like that, see, the difference between me and somebody that would have hate towards me is that I go to sleep every night, John, and I know exactly who I am as a person. And people like that do not know who they are as people. What I would like to say is, when it boils down to it, nobody else can make you happy but yourself. And I genuinely do think the most important basic thing to be happy and comfortable in yourself. And I think that there's always help. There really, really is. There's always help. And I know you would be the first person to help anybody if they needed anything with regards to anything, but especially with therapy or help or advice. And I would be kind of the same. But I think Life is too short to not live it how you want to live it.
I'm Dr. Anémona Perez. I am a clinical hypnotherapist, psychologist, and also shamanic counselor, which I know may sound like a very interesting combination. Complex trauma and high-functioning depression were just eating me alive, although I've been in therapy for many, many years. I took the risk. I took a massive risk. And it's interesting because now looking back, I feel like it was a risk. But back then, it felt like a no-brainer. There's no such a thing as a magic wand. You actually need to have done the groundwork. And this is what talk therapy did for me. I really enjoy playing with expanded states of consciousness and with our connection to the multidimensional. Consciousness is not just a product of the mind. It's a cosmic phenomenon, and we are part of it. We are an integral part of it. It's experiencing love and self-love and higher love, experiencing that frequency of higher love that maybe not all of us had the privilege of receiving it in childhood. So there is a level of connection that brings something that people who experience traumatic childhood was really missing from their experience.
Yeah.
The magic is how we bring that into our life and into our being, and not just hanging up there because it's all nice and fluffy and easy. And because that's why we came. This is my belief. That's why we came onto this beautiful planet, because we wanted to experience polarity. We wanted to experience the earth and living in this society and dealing with these challenges. And it's like you have a secret ally that you can appeal to, and it really helps getting a more round perspective on life's challenges and relationships.
Yeah. A bus is a bus in our material world, and it will run you over if you can't be conscious of that in the critical moment. That's one of my biggest pet peeves from the last decade, is how everybody goes around calling people narcissistic and they don't realize that we're all narcissistic. That's how the ego functions as part of being human. You know, some of the people that I've encountered in my life who talk about, oh, I've killed all of my ego, you know, I've gone through several unwrappings, it's all dead now, are possibly some of the most egotistical people I've ever met.
You know, when we are all love and light and zen, and that means let's pretend that the horrific things didn't happen.
Yes.
And you can never heal this way, and your body will pay the price. My sole purpose was, and still is, to become myself. It's not the job that gives me the sole purpose. Is me becoming more of me.
People aren't orientated to have a relationship with themselves, actually. They want to have relationships with everything externally, but nothing internally. I think it's wonderful to explore your relationship with yourself and ask yourself who you're becoming.
The most important relationship they have is the relationship with themselves. Sometimes trauma, it's not the bad things that happen to you, it's the good things that didn't happen and should have happened. You'll never be 100% healed.
When I was doing my shamanic practitioner training with Martin Duffy, him saying that there's 3 questions a shaman should always ask his client, or a shamanic practitioner should always ask his client, which is, when's the last time you sang, when's the last time you danced, and when's the last time you laughed?
You are your purpose. So that's going to be my closing statement. You are your purpose. Becoming you is the purpose.
Thank you for listening. I'm curious about what this conversation has stimulated for you. Thoughts, feelings, curiosity. If this episode intrigued you, hit follow to be notified about new episodes. I know these conversations are valuable to me, and if you think they're valuable too, please do leave a review. Leaving a review allows more people to discover the podcast. You can scroll down to ratings and reviews on Apple Podcasts and click write a review. You can also connect with Becoming You on Instagram and TikTok by searching the handle at becoming_you__. The links are in the show notes too. You can also visit www.becomingyou.ie to explore the idea of becoming yourself. Thanks for tuning in. Bye for now.